Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Walt's How-Tos and Reviews. Today I'm making a follow-up video to my NMN and Resveratrol experiment. I felt obligated to make this video because I've learned a ton since I made my last video. I read David Sinclair's book, and I also listened to some other podcasts that really went into the science behind these molecules and kind of the leading cutting edge stuff, what's going on with them. So I really wanted to get that information to you. I also wanted to address a bunch of the comments that were on the last video. A lot of commonly asked questions, a lot of things that weren't certain or clear, and I just wanted to clear all that up. As well as I really just wanted to say thank you guys for commenting. I learned a ton from you guys, and I also wanted to share that with everybody. And finally, I want to apply everything that I've learned into explaining what I'm going to do next to try to figure out, does this stuff actually have an effect on humans instead of just mice and stuff. So I just wanted to share that with you and what I plan to do, and then also just ask for your feedback. Do you think that is going to be the best way to figure this stuff out? So let me just jump into the comments. First thing, I just want to say thank you so much. I really learned a lot from you guys. Shout out to a couple people, Der Mexicano, who linked a podcast that was really scientific with Peter Attia and David Sinclair that really got into stuff that even his book didn't get into. So I actually learned a ton there. Also for Cork125, who kind of shed light on the fact that I really don't know what I'm doing, and I was about to make another huge mistake in running this experiments that would have, not gotten us to the result that we wanted. So I really appreciate that. And then again, there was a lot of just, commonly asked questions that I wanted to answer for you guys that a lot of people seem to be confused on. So I'm just going to jump into it. First thing, I just want to have a little disclaimer. NMN hasn't had human trials on it yet. There could be unsafe side effects with it, so I'm not recommending this to anybody. I'm just using myself as a human guinea pig and trying to tell you what my experience is with it so that you don't have to. But I just felt obligated, in case there is some kind of negative side effect, clear my conscience. I'm not recommending anybody take this. It's not regulated by the FDA, so this is for educational purposes only. Take it for what you will. I wanted to explain why the Horvath test is going to be the best way to measure if this is having any effect on, the metabolism and the rate at which I am aging. Because a lot of other people were trying to be nice and give me other alternatives that were more cost effective and whatnot. So the biggest one that I'll talk about is that inner age that David Sinclair is a part of. So that kind of taints it, makes it a bit biased as well. But basically they're taking 6 different blood markers and then a couple other, non-blood markers, and they're looking at them and coming up with an algorithm to predict your age. But those blood markers could be thrown off by a lot of different things, whether it's something you ate, maybe a little virus that you had and you weren't even aware about it when you got your blood drawn. So it's not very accurate, and it's just kind of an algorithmic prediction. Whereas the Horvath clock actually measures thousands of epigenetic marks on your DNA, these little tags, and it's called methylation. But the biggest thing here is this is a linear thing. So it only goes in one direction and it can't go backwards. And that's something that I didn't really even fully understand at the last video I made. A good analogy I heard is like carbon dating for your age, and it's 95% accurate. So it was wrong of me to think that, hey, if I take this and it reverses the clock, there's proof, because it doesn't work that way. So this only goes forward, it doesn't go backwards, and it's chronological. So basically you're just seeing, is it speeding up or is it slowing down? But it's always going to go in one direction. I'll come back to that a little bit later. If you're interested in the Horvath clock, there's plenty of articles out there. That Peter Attia podcast, which I'll link in the description, if you fast forward to 28 minutes and 20 seconds, they're going to talk about that Horvath clock and get a little bit more descriptive in how it actually works. So I wanted to move on to clearing up some stuff in the comments. First thing was, everyone was saying, hey, David Sinclair takes 1 gram of resveratrol. And I could see their point of view. It's like, why are you taking a half gram? Where did you get that information? So I wanted to clear that up. Before I ever knew about any of this, I'm just, regular dude. I was listening to a Joe Rogan podcast. This, scientist comes on and is like, hey, we figured out how to slow down aging, yada, yada. And yeah, I take these things every day because I think it's going to work. And I was like, what? This is crazy. I want to get my hands on that and try some of that. And that was back in January. So if you go to YouTube and look at the Joe Rogan podcast with David Sinclair that they posted on January 29th this year, 2019, at exactly 7 minutes, he says, I take a half a gram of resveratrol. And then Joe Rogan even reiterates it like, so wait, how much, a half a gram of that? And he says yes. So that's where I got the half a gram from. Now I can see where there's confusion because on the Peter Attia podcast, which was September 9th of 2019, at 1 hour, 36 minutes, 22 seconds, he says, I take a gram of resveratrol. So I was really confused in that, and I'm not sure if he maybe made a mistake in what he was saying, what he was taking, or perhaps, maybe at the beginning of the year he was taking a half gram and then bumped it up to a full gram. And then after reading David Sinclair's book, he does write on page 304 what he takes. And he says he does take 1 gram of the resveratrol. He also takes 1 gram of NMN, and he also takes 1 gram of Metformin. So another thing that a lot of people commented on, I didn't know from the first few videos I made, was that he was taking the resveratrol with yogurt because the fats help it digest, and that is true that you should take it that way. So I didn't know that originally when you saw me first taking this. I was just taking it with water, but now I do know that. And again, thank you for commenting and filling me in on that, because as far as I could tell, that first podcast I listened to from Joe Rogan, he mentioned nothing of that. He did say he put it in yogurt, but he said it was because it's chalky like dust, and it was just to mix it up so that it could actually take it. At least that was my understanding. A lot of people have asked, where do you get your NMN? And in David Sinclair's book, he recommends look for large companies with good reputations that are seeking highly pure, meaning 98% or better. And he says look for a GMP label, which stands for Good Manufacturing Practices. So this is the one I bought. When I go to buy more, I'll definitely do some more research and try to find the best one. If you guys want to comment on where you think the best source is, I really am not too worried about the cost. I just want to make sure I'm not going to be wasting time taking something that isn't actually NMN. And I just want to find, pure NMN that I can get and be really confident that this is the real deal. I may even go get it tested and pay for that just to make sure, so that I can show all you guys, hey, I'm really taking the real stuff. But just wanted to hit on that a little bit for you guys and clear some of that confusion up. So why does David Sinclair take those 3 molecules, drugs, supplements, whatever you want to call them? I mean, they call them drugs in the book. Metformin is a prescribed drug, so I'm going to go with that word. I had a couple people comment that they didn't like that, but that's what the scientists are calling them, so I'm just going to go with that. So the reason he takes those drugs is in mice. The big thing there is in mice. Every single one of them makes the mice live longer. Taken alone, it makes them live longer, and combining them, at least with the resveratrol and the NMN, if you take them together, it has a compounding effect and makes you live longer. I think David Sinclair's analogy is one is the accelerator pedal and the other one is the actual fuel, and combining them, you have the best effect. So with metformin, this is a drug that's been around for a long time and it's been prescribed for a long time. So theoretically, it actually is safe in terms of we know that it's not just out there hurting people. In fact, it's having the opposite effect. So I'm just going to read some of the stuff I highlighted about metformin straight out of David Sinclair's book. So full disclaimer, I'm terrible with reading names, and reading and writing is not my strong suit. I'm more of a math guy, so I'll probably botch some words. But in mice, even a very low dose of metformin has been shown by Rafael de Cabo's lab at the National Institute of Health to increase lifespan by nearly 6%. Though some have argued that the effect is due mostly to weight loss, either way, that amounts to an equivalent of 5 extra healthy years for humans, with emphasis on the healthy. So in humans, this is on page 125, a study of more than 41,000 metformin users between the ages of 68 and 81 concluded that metformin reduced the likelihood of dementia, cardiovascular disease, cancer, frailty, and depression, and not by a small amount. In one group of already frail subjects, metformin use over the course of 9 years reduced dementia by 4%, depression by 16%, cardiovascular disease by 19%, frailty by 24%, and cancer by 4%. In other studies, the protective power of metformin against cancer has been far greater than that. Though not all cancers are suppressed, more than 25 studies have shown a powerful protective effect, sometimes as great as 40% lower risk, most notably for lung, colorectal, pancreatic, and breast cancer. So it doesn't suppress all cancers, but for acute cancers like the ones I just mentioned, according to this, And, he cites all of his sources. Some studies showed that it would have a 40% decrease in those specific cancers, which is unreal. He takes metformin because it makes people live longer and it reduces the risk of cancer. So I wasn't taking metformin. I may take metformin on the next one. My biggest fear was, if you listen to the second Joe Rogan podcast, they talked a little bit about metformin having an issue with performance. They actually do mention it in the first one too, in terms of like energy level. May have an issue with because it's going to lower your glucose levels, your sugar levels in your blood and whatnot, and then the production of energy and actually having energy may be thrown off a bit. So I was just worried, I'm a young adult that does like to exercise and hit the gym, and I just don't want it to mess up, my stamina or my endurance or my strength abilities in the gym and just suffer that. That was my biggest reasoning for being afraid of it. And on top of that, I have to actually get it subscribed, and that was just an extra step and stuff. But if you guys put in the comments that you really want me to take metformin, I'll go to my doctor and I'll get it prescribed. All right, so why take resveratrol? So I'm just going to read some more stuff about resveratrol straight from his book. So on page 130, he says that they tested resveratrol in yeast cells that did not have the SIR2 gene, and there was no effect. They tested on calorie-restricted yeast and saw no further increase in lifespan, suggesting that the pathway was being activated. This is how calorie restriction was working. So basically, in yeast, there's this SIR2 gene, and if the yeast cell has it and they have a calorie-restricted diet, they live longer. But at the same time, if they don't have a calorie-restricted diet and they take the resveratrol, they live longer. They're basically claiming that the resveratrol is having the same effect that a calorie-restricted diet does in the yeast cells. So on page 132, later we fed resveratrol to obese mice at 1 year of age. Something interesting happened. The mice stayed fat, causing postdoctoral fellow Joseph Barr, now a professor at the University of Pennsylvania, to conclude that I wasted more than a year of his time jeopardizing his scientific career. Blah, blah, blah. But when Rafael de Cabo, our collaborator at the NIH, opened up the mice, they were shocked. The resveratrol mice looked identical to the mice on a normal diet, with healthy hearts, livers, arteries, and muscles. They also had more mitochondria, less inflammation, and lower blood sugar levels. The ones they didn't dissect ended up living about 20% longer than normal. So even obese mice with resveratrol lived longer than the obese mice without resveratrol. So that's just a little bit about the resveratrol. Okay, so why does he take NMN? So basically, he's taking NMN to boost NAD. And the reason from page 137 is, we know that NAD boosters are an effective treatment for a wide variety of ailments in mice, and that they extend their lifespan even when given late in life. We know that emerging research strongly suggests they could have a similar, if not duplicative, effect on human health. So that's why he's taking the NMN, is to boost his NAD levels. So if you go to 1 hour, 46 minutes, and 23 seconds on the Peter Attia podcast with David Sinclair, they talk about, NAD, taking it has no known effect. Some people take it orally, there's even people that are taking it intravenously, but as of right now, there's no known effect of just taking it on its own. And the logic behind that is, you have a cell, and then you have this NAD molecule, and it's good for the cell to have high NAD levels, but taking it can't get into the cell because it's too big of a molecule. So basically, you take this precursor, such as NR or NMN, and basically what NR is, it's partly B3 in DNA, and that's small enough to where it can actually go up into the cell. And once it's in the cell, it gets connected with a phosphate, and then it becomes NMN, and then from there, it's turned into NAD. So basically, NR and NMN are precursors to NAD, and by taking that, the end result is boosting your level of NAD. So why doesn't David Sinclair take NR? Because it's cheaper, and that was another big question that was in the comments, and a lot of people talked about taking NR. So right now, I think either of them work, NR or NMN. The reasons why David Sinclair's opinion that NMN is better or going to have a better effect is, you're giving the cell all the stuff that it needs. So it needs the sugar, it needs the DNA, and it needs that phosphate to become NMN. So it doesn't have to convert it from NR to NMN to NAD. It just goes straight from NMN to NAD. And there's a lot of other literature and opinions and reasons why. One thing they mentioned in that podcast is that there's some studies suggest NR only raised NAD levels in the liver, but over 1,000 milligrams raised it in muscles. NMN in only mice here raised NAD in the mitochondria. So if it translates over to humans, it appears, according to David Sinclair's stuff, NMN is just a little bit superior to NR, but they're both going to have a similar effect. There's some other stuff with the NMN versus NR that would suggest that NMN is better. Another thing I want to talk about is a lot of people were claiming you need to take this sublingually. So if you go to that Peter Attia podcast at 1 hour, 53 minutes, and 20 seconds, there's a lot of good information on that. And basically, the reason that they say do that is if you just take it straight into your gut, it's going to get trapped in the liver and changed from NMN to a different molecule, so it'll never actually get to the other parts of your body. So they're claiming if you take it sublingually, it goes straight into your cardiovascular system and it bypasses your gut and your liver. So right now, there is no clear answer, and Sinclair kind of talks about that it might actually be beneficial for the NMN to get into your gut biome, and you have, bacteria and different microorganisms living in your gut, and that it might be healthy for them to have NMN. And there's a lot of new stuff saying that a healthy gut biome is a healthy human, that everything's connected. So, David Sinclair said it was, quote unquote messy right now. So I'm thinking, since this isn't very clear and, there could be benefits of both sublingual and taking it into the gut, when I do my next experiment, I'm going to still take a gram. I'm going to put half a gram under my tongue, let it dissolve, and I'm going to ingest the other half a gram into my gut. So that way, I'm checking off all boxes and just doing the best that I can. Okay. So that's why he takes this stuff, is because it works in mice. The big question is, does this work in humans? And that's what we don't know, and that's what, I'm trying to answer and trying to figure out, is there, any effect actually on humans? Because in mice, there is definitely 100% without a doubt an effect that's happening on mice, and some of that stuff is pretty profound. They give older mice, NMN, and their cardiovascular system goes back to being young. They even talk about in his book how they had elderly mice run 3 kilometers, which no mice even runs that, even the young ones. So it was just astonishing that they can take, an elderly mouse and give it the endurance of a young mouse, if not even better than that. So does this stuff work on humans? Nobody really knows. So quick little side tangent that was, I don't know if it was alarming or just that I really thought about when I read David's book, is his dad is taking these drugs as well. And for 20 years, his dad had abnormal liver enzymes. He said abnormal, so I'm assuming that they are high. And the first time I got my blood tested, my enzymes were high. And then after taking the NMN, his liver enzymes went back to normal and were lowered. And that's the same thing that happened to me. Now, full disclaimer, there was a lot of reasons that could have happened. It could have had nothing to do with the NMN. It's actually quite common for you to have one blood test where your liver enzymes are high. Could be a lot of reasons for that. Even just a little virus that you don't have any symptoms of, you're not aware of, that your body washes out and whatnot. So it's very common for someone to get a blood test, have high liver enzymes, take another blood test, and they go back to normal. So it might not have had anything to do with the NMN, but I just thought it was interesting that his dad had abnormal liver enzymes for 20 years, and then it went back to normal, and I'm almost worried, like, man, I should maybe go get my liver enzymes to see if they went back up, and then and maybe it was the NMN that helped lower them down, and maybe I have some underlying problem going on. But so kind of with that little liver enzymes tangent I went on, that's why those biometric age tests, such as the inner age test, might not be that accurate, because it's one of the markers it's looking at is one of your liver enzymes, and mine would have been high and the next one would have been low. So according to that test, unless my other 5 markers were out of whack, it would have said that I got healthier or younger, where the Horvath test is 95% accurate, and that isn't going to have an effect on it. So if you actually listen to that Peter Attia podcast at 1 hour and 4 minutes, he explains that we need to do something deeper, and these biometric blood testing age markers aren't really accurate and don't really say anything, don't really prove anything. So he actually says we need something deeper. And they further go on basically from 105 to about 107, talking about exactly what I'm trying to do, that if somebody were to look at their rate of change based on this Horvath clock, if we were actually able to change the rate at which someone is aging, that would be good evidence to show like something is going on here with these molecules. And he even asked, like, isn't there a company, doing this already? I feel like this would be a hot topic. Sinclair says, yeah, they're just springing up. They also kind of mentioned that since there's not really profit to be made on it, science isn't really pursuing this kind of stuff. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. They hit the nail right on the head in that podcast that, like, somebody should do that. Just take their Horvath clock test every 6 months a year, save their blood samples, and see if the rate of change is increasing or decreasing. So here's where I'm kind of put up with a dilemma because, 1 month, 2 months isn't going to be enough time. Ideally it'd be like year to year, but we're all impatient, so waiting a year is a long time. And David Sinclair in that podcast does say even 6 months a year is better. So being impatient, I think, I want to go for the 6 months. I'm curious what you guys think, if I should wait the full year or if you're impatient like me, or I should do it every 6 months. But basically my plan is I'm going to take the Horvath test. I haven't been taking these since I stopped that last experiment, and just get a baseline. And then I'll wait 6 months without taking anything and get another baseline, and we'll see how quickly am I aging. And then for 6 months, I will take these drugs and then see, is the rate at which I'm aging, did it have an effect at all? I'm actually not 100% sure like how it reads out on the results, but we'll find out. I'll post it as soon as I take this test. And then the 6 months, I'm going to take the drugs, and then we'll see, did I age the same amount from this 6 months to that 6 months, or did it slow down? And if it speeds up or ages the same, it's pretty conclusive to say, at least from a 6 month time period, you can't say this did anything, and then maybe I'll change it to a year. But being impatient, I want to do that 6 months. And if we do see like, hey, I actually age slower in that second 6 months than this first 6 months, I mean, that's pretty good evidence that this is having an effect. And I think even the main academic scientists would agree that there is something to be said there, because there is another study that one of you guys commented on, that actually 3 other drugs, 2 diabetic drugs, and I think it was human growth hormone, actually they saw, which they thought was impossible, that the age clock actually went back a little bit. They said it was only 9 humans, and it was actually on the second podcast with David Sinclair and Joe Rogan. So it's not conclusive yet. They need to keep testing it. It's really expensive to do. So they're not 100% sure. It might have just been like something wrong with the test, because they thought, this should be impossible. But if I can show that, hey, I've aged slower, that would be huge. So yeah, guys, I mean, I'm really curious what you think in the comments. If you think that is the best way, if you think, hey, I should really pump the brakes and do a full year just so we have good evidence, and I don't waste that time. And if there's anybody else that's out there doing it, please, share it with us. I'm really curious to see, like, maybe you, for some reason, have, old samples, old blood samples, and then for some reason are taking this stuff, so you could just give us that data right now. Sounds like David Sinclair and these guys don't even have that data because this stuff is so brand new. So that's what we're trying to figure out here. 3 people commented on how I could pay for this stuff because it is expensive. Julian Castle and Roger Thacker mentioned do like a crowdfunding thing, which I thought was a really good idea. And Jason Voss even said, hey, contact that company, tell them what you're doing, and you'll advertise for them and ask for a discount. And those are really good ideas. What I was really shocked on is how popular this topic is, and lots of people have been, watching my YouTube. And I saw YouTube said, hey, I could monetize because I got 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 watch hours. So I monetize, and right now it's saying I'm making about $81 a month, which comes out to about $972 a year, which, thank you so much for doing that. I'm going to use all of that money to pay for these tests. So if you take 3 Horvath tests, which is $900 roughly with tax, and you take 6 months of the drugs, which would be about 1,000, looking at about $2,000. So alone, just by you guys watching this YouTube and subscribing, I'm going to pay for half of it. So just wanted to say thanks again so much for watching, and obviously there's a demand for this, so as long as there's a demand for this, I'll be able to at least pay for half of it. And I'm guessing by the time I actually 6 months goes down the road, maybe I'll be making more money so I can pay for all of it. And if I end up taking more money, I'm open to suggestions. I'll go do the Inside Tracker blood test. I think it's about 600 to get all your markers, and we can just look at this every 6 months and see what changed, because I know a lot of people are interested in this, and some of the people obviously from the comments are a little bit more knowledgeable about the blood markers and what's changing than I am. So I just want to say thank you guys for allowing me to do this. Because you've watched this and you're interested in it, I can afford to do all this. So I don't need to do any crowdfunding or anything. Just by you watching this video is helping me pay to run these tests. Last few things, so I made a playlist called Anti-Aging, and I will put all this stuff under that playlist. So I know a lot of you are subscribing because you want to know about this, but I enjoy making videos, and I just do little projects in my house and make a video about it, and I know you don't want to see that. If you're curious, like, hey, does this video have anything to do with NMN and anti-aging, I'll put it under that playlist, so you can just go to that playlist and look at it, and you don't have to worry about the other noise. Furthermore, I'm going to make a website. It isn't up yet, and I don't have a link in the description yet, but as soon as I make it, I'll put a link in all the videos description. Basically, that just kind of organizes all this information that we've been collecting. So I'll put it in there and put in, every single testimonial that someone wrote. Hey, I'm this age, I'm taking it, these are my results. I'll put them in all one place so somebody doesn't have to read through the comments and find it. If you are interested in that, 90% of the testimonials were on part 3. And there was only a few others that were in the other 2 videos. So if you're interested in that, you can go to the comments and read what people wrote. I think there was 32 different testimonials of people taking the drug and just saying their experience, which is, a good amount of knowledge, which is why I want to make a little website, have FAQs to commonly asked questions that people are asking, clear that up, and just kind of direct you where you need to go if you want to research more, as well as just put the anecdotal evidence of what everyone is experiencing. So I know something I read in this book that was really interesting is, the placebo effect is really powerful and real. So this could all totally be, nonsense in terms of that it's having an effect. And something that was interesting is in some elderly women that had entered menopause were starting to take this, and then they would start getting their cycle again, which, has some pretty profound implications. But what I was most astonished about was Sinclair noted that this is still anecdotal evidence, and that could totally be the placebo effect. And I didn't realize like a placebo effect could have that happen to where you can actually trick yourself into starting your cycle again after you've entered menopause. But he took it a step farther and showed that they have actually been able to do this in horses, and his understanding is horses, there is no placebo effect then because they have no idea what they're taking. So pretty crazy, awesome stuff. I definitely recommend reading the book. If you're not into reading, thanks again to Der Mexicano for showing me that podcast. I'll link it in the bottom. I think it was just really informative because it was really about the science. Joe Rogan's a lot more talking, how you doing, how are your kids. This was like pretty much all just from start to finish talking about the science behind it. And Peter actually plays a little bit of devil advocate, and you can kind of like really get a good idea, especially with like the sublingual stuff and everything. I learned a ton from it. Obviously you're interested in this stuff, so if you want to check it out, you can. My next video I'll post, I'm going to take that Horvath test. I'll just post a quick video showing like what the results were. I'm not sure if it's going to say you're this age or like what kind of how the test reads, but we'll take a look at that test, and then it'll have to be another 6 months before we do the next test. The biggest thing while we got that time period of waiting, basically 6 months before I start taking the drugs again, because we need to get a baseline. I was planning on just taking the NMN and the Resveratrol. If you think that I should take the Metformin, if I have more people saying definitely take the Metformin than saying no, I think those two are fine, then I will go ahead and get my doctor to prescribe it for me so we can get all the data. Thanks again for watching, really appreciate it. See you guys next time.